Newsbrief. Good Shepherd Entertainment has invested in Artificer, a fledgling game development studio, funded some of the devs behind the Good Shepherd published games Hard West and Phantom Doctrine. Terms of the agreement have not been shared publicly, but the deal sees Good Shepherd picking up a majority stake in the Warsaw-based game development studio. Already, Artificer has over 30 developers on board, including some veterans of the Call of Juarez and Dead Island games. The studio says that it aims to embrace sustainable development and work in a variety of genres, though it has yet to detail its first project, Artifact. Since it was announced, I have followed Artifact with the intention of writing about it. It's right in my wheelhouse. Not only do I play card games, but I worked on a game that's similar in some ways. It's also appealing to write about a new game, rather than one that's several years or decades old. Normally I write what is probably best described as design-centric game criticism. But based on metrics, Artifact clearly has issues, and those issues are fairly well understood. There's no definitive write-up, a video on those issues, though this video provides a good overview. But if you care enough to read forums, the repetitive nature of the complaints is clear. It's also tough to write about the design issues with Artifact in that you have to get deep in the mechanical wheels. Someone unfamiliar with the game might not understand the complaints, and someone familiar with the game will be well aware of them. I expected Artifact to be bigger than it is. That idea strike while the iron is hot, with some cogent analysis, and reap the benefits of high click counts. At 0 cents a click you need a lot of clicks to get reach, but not many analytical developer types are discussing it, and when they try to discuss a conversation often turns to well, I cannot say much because I have not played it myself. So for this blog post, I'm diverging from my normal format. Rather than writing design-centric criticism, I am instead doing something more akin to game design work, the kind of design work I did on my own games, as a consultant. Shamelessly taken from https://www.reddit.com Artifact comments. Anko 7U Arobi Omarti IONMADABOXARTFORARTIFACT A very incorporated complete review of Artifact cards. My Google Doc notes on Artifact cards. In college, I took a short fiction creative writing class, and got back an assignment splashed with red ink. One of the errors called out by the professor was that I written. She saw a vision of. His note was that using visions, by definition. The key lesson of that class was that while a novel can have entire sentences, paragraphs or chapters, or in the case of long fantasy series, entire books that are sloppily thrown together, in the short story every word matters, and you can and should make every word the best possible one. A card game is similar in that the cards represent a finite amount of content. In a card game, with 100 cards, you have 100 text entries, 100 pieces of art, 100 names, 100 sets of stats, some keywords, hopefully not 100. You can and should iterate and agonize over each of them. Artifact strikes me as a messy game. I sometimes describe it as loose, but I was not sure what caused that feeling. So as an experiment, I started doing what I might do for work. I began listing the cards in order and noting issues, and there are a lot of issues. Fresh eyes on a project can be invaluable, and they only last a short while, like a pet owner who gets used to pet mails. Developers and testers quickly become used to quirks or difficulty issues. Artifact feels to me like a game that needed fresh eyes. The document I have written represents that it was written after a few hours with the game, to reflect the thoughts of a new player. In some cases, it's not correct. Initially I thought that blocking and comeback targets are the same. They are not. But my confusion reflects how these two concepts mostly overlap, and appear to be used somewhat interchangeably, even if on closer examination there's some technically justifiable logic behind that. That last sentence describes a lot of artifact on deep examination. Awkward rules technically work out, but they are inscrutable on not just a technical level, but an intuitive one. In the document titled Pretty Hard into Regeneration, this is a Reddit conversation on how regeneration in Artifact works. As you can see, there are about 5 different mental models on display. It's an instant heal, a shield, like armor, like single-use armor, that also heals your soul, actually not really like armor, negative damage. This is not the only conversation like this I have seen. When I first saw regeneration I too was confused, and I am a relatively smart person, who's played other card games, and DOTA2 Regeneration is not a novel concept invented for Artifact. It's a straightforward one that appears in dozens of video games. It takes some doing to make regenerating health over time this complicated and confusing. After playing the game more, I am no longer confused by regeneration. And every game has some oddities that must be learned. But Artifact has too many death by the 1,000 cards. It's not just the regeneration that's problematic, or the wording on Purge, or the counterintuitive nature of siege damage. It's all of these things together, and these are just card problems that are joined by base mechanical problems like the apparent arbitrariness of attack arrows. Some of the things in this document might appear anal, but if there's a place to be anal, it's when examining the text of cards in card game. To write these complaints off as pedantic is like accusing a copy editor of being pedantic about grammar. A note on format, the bold bullet point lists are probably where I'd stop if I was writing this for my own game, or if I was writing it for someone I'd convinced enough with to be on the same page. The paragraphs are more talky, for the benefit of readers unfamiliar with Artifact, or who are not in basic agreement about high-level issues. Tonally is a little less professional than I do write employer and a little more than I do write for myself. I suspect there will be the temptation among some people to go through the document and rebut, well, this is not right, this is just your opinion, etc. Well, I do not think regeneration is confusing at all. These are, of course, my opinions, and if you do not like them you probably should not hire me to do contract work on your game. But if I think this way, probably other people do as well. And in many cases I know that they do through observation of internet chatter and watching people play. The point of this part of card design review is not to be 100% correct. It's an early step in a process that would involve a lot of back and forth that results in a variety of changes and, in some cases, none at all. Unintended audience. My hope is that this document will be interesting to 3 audiences. While the document is a design-style document, it works as criticism, and one reason I wrote it is to push back on. Nobody can deny that card game design is excellent. The sentiment I see a fair amount. I enjoy Artifact. The design is interesting and in some ways very thoughtful. But it's fraught with issues. Too often I see both players and developers refuse to acknowledge design problems in a game, and instead push the blame for underperformance onto factors like marketing and ancillary features. When Heroes of the Storm Shattered is competitively, there were Multiple Reddit posts on what Blizzard could have done differently to make the game more successful. But most of them did not address the gameplay at all, instead focusing on irrelevant changes like improve the pivoting screen. Side note, I wrote about Heroes of the Storm struggling as an esport in 2016. When you like a game, when you or your friends worked on it, if you are just trying to be mindful of hurt feelings, it feels a lot better to say that the PR strategy was flawed, or that the game just missed the target audience rather than that the game has major issues. But it's not you, it's me. You really means that it is in fact you. It's not helpful to say that a game failed to find an audience, unless you can say why just saying that is more restatement than explanation.